Hello, everybody, and welcome to an exciting conversation today. It is International Women's Day, and we are pretty fortunate to be here in St. John's, Newfoundland, with our very own CAA Atlantic's Dalley. And we have some exciting news today. She has been awarded one of the most powerful women, top 25 most powerful women in Atlantic Canada. So we're pretty excited to have this conversation in light of International Women's Day on March 8th. And we're here to celebrate and have a little conversation about women in leadership. So I wanted to start. I'm going to bring you back to February 10th, 2021.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
This is why email is bad.
So I did some digging. So I found it, and I found the announcement that you were going to be joining CAA Atlantic. And I sent you a note right away to your personal email. And I said, and I quote, "I'm not shy to say I had really hoped our new CEO would be a woman. And this is a major bonus in my and many others' opinion. I look forward to getting to know you, assisting you with your onboarding." And I remember that meant something to you. Yeah.
It did. It's funny. We were having a conversation with a group of women this morning, and one of them made the note that when they became the first CEO of the organization they became a part of, they didn't want the focus to be on that they were a woman at the time, because they didn't want to see or have the perception, right, that was the reason that they had got the opportunity. And obviously it wasn't. I mean, this was an incredible woman with, such a strong background and is such an incredible leader, but there was that hesitancy to kind of put that out and lead with that. And subsequently, she said she felt it was a huge mistake because what she didn't realize is how other people perceive you. And so that was a lesson I learned very early on when I was sitting in the boardroom at my former company, and I was an executive sitting at the executive table. And I was sitting in a room with a bunch of people. I don't remember the occasion now because it's not really important. But there was a woman across the table, and she looked across and she said, "I knew that this was a place I wanted to be when I looked at the executive team and I saw you there." And I remember it was such a remarkable moment in my life, because you go through the world and sometimes you don't look at you don't see what other people are seeing. And a lot of times people don't tell you. Like, there's tons of women in the world that I admire because they've, I really believe this. I think women have to work twice as hard. I think they have to be faster. I think they have to be stronger. There are obstacles that are, structurally impediments to success. And so you have to be able to pivot around those. But you're just doing it. You know what I mean? I can't describe it any other way. Sometimes you're just doing it. But in the case you don't know what other people are looking at, you don't see it. You don't see that they're seeing you do that. And I see other women do it, but I don't go up to them and go, "Amazing. I love that you've gotten where you are." So anyway, it was remarkable that you had said that, because I certainly didn't feel that I got the role because I was a woman. I think I got it because I was qualified and I knew what I was going to do, and I would be a good leader for the organization, and I had a vision of where the organization could go. But the fact that I was a woman and that was inspiring to someone else was really powerful.
Well, it was super powerful because historically we had male leadership for 3 decades, right? So it was something that I had hoped, but I was happily surprised, I guess, when it happened. So let's talk a little bit about your journey to getting to that point.
Sure.
Okay. So were you a little girl that was, "I want to be a CEO when I grow up"? How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, listen, great question. And I think this is really interesting because I've said many times, no, I was not. And it really, I would go so far as to say, up until until I started probably applying for CEO roles, I didn't set it as a target. I didn't set it as an ambition. I was having dinner with a friend the other night, and I said to him, I really thought when I was looking for this opportunity, that next step in my career, that I would be a really good 2IC, right? Like a second in command. I was like, I would be just a great 2IC. And I think about it now, and I said to him, I'm not sure I could anymore. Because it is such an incredible privilege and an incredible opportunity. But I didn't set out going, by this time I will achieve this. I just kind of doubled down and focused and tried to do good work, right?
Was there a TSN turning point? Like, was there a time when someone saw something in you and said, hey, you're going to be a great leader?
Well,
or you have what it takes to be a leader?
I think over time through my career, I had many people come to me because since I was in my mid-20s, first of all, I've been in leadership roles almost my entire career.
Right.
Like I started in them.
Okay.
So I was managing people from a very early age, and it was something I felt really passionate about. I always said if I didn't do the work that I'm doing now, I probably would have done kind of industrial psychology, right? I love culture, I love organizations, I love systems, I love how they work together. And I've always wanted, honestly, I've had a passion for just creating a great place for people to come to work. Like where you get up in the morning, you don't have Monday morning dreads.
Right.
You think, I'm going to work. This job is like that for me. Like it is every day is astoundingly good.
It is a fun place to work.
It's a fun place to work, but we're creating a great place,
oh,
right?
Totally.
And it's co-creation, by the way. Let me say this, like, doesn't matter the title you hold. Like, I just couldn't do this on my own. It's impossible. And the reason I am where I am is today and where the organization is where it is because it's a collective and it's a culture and a mindset that one person doesn't drive it. And I really believe that. And I've seen strong leaders leave vacuums behind them, right? Some of them are political, but some of them are corporate leaders. When they leave, there's this huge sucking sound. That's how I visualize it in my mind. And the company suffers as a result of the isolation that ended up being created around the leader. So I've never wanted that. I wanted to be part of a team. I work collaboratively. I love that. And so when I think about those turning points in my life, there were a lot of people whispering to me because I was always close to power, right? I was always working with CEOs. I was always, kind of the right hand in many cases. And I would have people come up and go, like, you're doing all the work. So after a while, when people tell you that you're doing all the work, like you should be stepping
You aspire
up.
higher.
Yeah. And so, I think at some point I started to really think, oh yeah, maybe I could, but with that comes just a bucket load of responsibility.
Totally.
And that's never scared me either.
No.
It doesn't bother me. I'm happy to take all the accountability, own all the responsibility, and that's just part and parcel what comes with the joy that is, really inspiring and trying to lead a group of people to do something that is beyond what we could have imagined.
Yeah. So I know that, is it 5 years in April?
No, 4 years, April 1st.
4 years in April. Okay. So
Not a joke.
Since you joined us. And I know that our search committee did not go out and say, we specifically want to hire a woman. I know that. But there are advantages to being a woman in leadership. And some of those characteristics I've actually learned from Adam Grant. Collaboration, creativity, being a little bit more nurturing, more relationship building. These are all things that are seen as an asset a lot of times when we're looking at boards, when we're trying to fill board profiles or what have you, and having those qualities at the table. We had a pretty good culture before you came.
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of soared to new heights. Can you talk a little bit about those attributes and how our executive leadership team at CAA is, I think it's more than 50% women now.
Well, I'd have to do the math, but
it's a lot.
Close.
It's
I
at
think
least
it's 50-50.
half. Yeah. Which is pretty impressive because before, 4 years ago, there was no female executives at CAA Atlantic in particular.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things, first of all. I think that when you talk about diversity across the board, I have sat at an executive table where I was the only woman. And a big table, right? Sometimes 10, sometimes 15 people. I will say that I didn't suffer from a lack of voice. Right. But it was different, right, to be in that room. And then I went from that to a much smaller, tighter executive team where 50% of the executive were women. 3 women, 3 men. It was different. And it really triggered for me this idea of this flywheel effect that people talk about, right? When you get enough diversity at the table, it feels different. When you're on your own, right? And so, if I look back, I'm sure there were times when I hesitated, when I thought twice about whether I should do something. Did I feel I had, a voice in the room? Did I have allies? I think anyone who was watching this who knew me at the time would laugh at that, because I think they feel like I speak the truth and speak truth to power. That's never been an impediment of mine. And that's, to be fair, a lot of that is the privilege that I carry with me, which is a lot of privilege. But I think when you get more than one, you're no longer alone.
No.
And so I remember the three of us working together, and I remember honestly, at the time, one of the men that I was working with would say to me, like, you guys are the powerhouses. You're the ones who are getting it done. And I remember he meant it as a compliment, and he's someone I really admire. But I remember walking out of the room every time he'd say it. He said it 2 or 3 times to me. And I thought, well, shouldn't we be in charge then?
Right.
Shouldn't it be us that are here? Like, why are we not, in that sort of president and CEO role? So it's a different space when you get a number of women around you. And I think we see that at our own company now, right?
Totally.
That the decisions are different. That's what I learned. The decisions are different. The conversation is different. We bring different things to the table.
Yes.
And until you've experienced it, it is very difficult to conceptualize.
I think that when I was researching, I read a stat from Forbes, or the Harvard Business Review. Forbes published it, but it's from the Harvard Business Review from 2024 that said companies with female executives are 30% more likely to outperform other companies. How they got that stat, I don't really know. But they also mentioned that as of 2023, women held only 10.4% of leadership positions on the Fortune 500, which is an all-time high. So that's 52 of the companies of the 500 have female women CEOs or presidents. So we are seeing growth. Like to compare, in 1999, of the Fortune 500, there was only 3. Right?
Yeah.
So there is some growth.
Progress is slow.
It
might be steady.
Yes.
But it is slow. And I think that's part and parcel with pressing ahead. And, if you look at International Women's Day, the theme to this year is about acceleration, right? How do you move faster and how do you get there faster? But I will say this, there are barriers that we just don't see.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. And so I think there's a little bit of patience that goes with it, but honestly, there's also a little bit of, well, let me step back. I was talking to this woman, Jackie, Kinley, who's in Halifax. She's a psychiatrist. She runs a company about resilience. She was doing a session with a group of us, and she made this statement. It really resonated with me. I remember it very well, talking about emotions, right, the emotional spectrum. And she said, anger is hope. And I thought, oh my God, that is just, it resonated with me. It stuck with me. Like, if I'm angry, I'm still hopeful.
Okay.
Right? I'm still fighting. I'm still moving forward. So when we think about accelerating the progress of women and the idea that we might be frustrated or angry about it, good. It means we still have hope. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the message that we have to carry forward. It's press on. It's, get more people involved in the fight and work harder. And I know we're probably going to cover it today, we're in a different time right now.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more important than ever that we honestly link arms and band together, because I think it's going to be really, really important that we stop the backslide.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We saw some backslide with the pandemic, right? Like women in the workforce.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We saw a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded us,
That's right.
What have we been battling against, right?
I think women are valuable at the table, right? And that's not to say, and I like to remind myself, because listen, we have a team of 50% women on the executive team, but we also have 50% men. Mm-hmm. And I wake up every day joyful to work with them, right? They are...
they're all great people.
Yeah, they're great people. And they're smart and competent and capable, and they're some of the best allies we have.
Yeah.
And so it's a privilege every day to get to work with the entire team. And I think the reason the team is strong, though, is because of those voices that we're bringing to the table and the discussions we're having and the quality of those discussions. That's not to say that, you don't want to be stereotypical and say that women leaders have a certain style.
Because they're all different.
Yeah,
They're still just people.
Yeah, listen, I've worked for women that I don't think were particularly good leaders. I've worked for men that weren't particularly good leaders.
Right.
I've worked for men who were phenomenal leaders, and
Right.
I've worked for women who were phenomenal
Right.
leaders. So, on gender lines, it's very difficult to be stereotypical. So I can only really speak to how I like to lead.
Yeah.
Right, and I think the pandemic changed that too. By the way,
Yeah.
and really talk about that, and that was instrumental for me when I stepped into this role. I was a pandemic CEO, right? I stepped in 2021, as you rightly said.
I remember the second lockdown.
It was right.
Yeah.
It was right in the pandemic. I had to quarantine. I spent 2 weeks, with the police outside my window, making sure it was still in there. Seems surreal now. While I was on Teams calls trying to get to know the team. So you had no choice coming out of that. Well, I guess people had a choice, but I felt I had no choice but to lead with compassion, right? People were having just such a struggle and such hard times. And we needed to just take a beat and be a little more open and a little more compassionate. And I think, honestly, when I think about my fellow colleagues, women rose to that occasion.
They did. They totally did. And I mean, there's a bit of a trickle-down effect, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your legacy. So imagine,
Weird.
old lady Dawn, you've left CAA Atlantic. You've retired, okay? Let's fast forward, whatever.
Okay,
I
I'm
don't
trying
know,
to
10,
go
20
there.
years.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm trying to go there.
Stay with me. And what are you leaving behind? How do you hope to be remembered? What do you hope your successor is like? Think about the journey that if we've started a journey over the last 4 years and it's continuing, and you're no longer there anymore.
I know. I'm gone. I'm golfing.
Proper thing.
I'm doing other things.
Somewhere warm, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
When I think, it's a little bit weird to think about it, first of all. And if I think back to when I was hired and why the board hired me, right? And listen, I'll tell this funny story. Don't let me forget the point of this question as I tell this story.
Okay.
But when the recruiter sent me the job first, and he, said, sort of, here's this job, and I went, CAA? Weird. I don't know anything about cars, and I don't really like cars that much. Like, I'm not really that person. He went, I'm sure he was, I think if you asked him now, he shook his head, and he went, that's not what they're looking for. I was like, oh, okay, well, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for someone who can drive innovation. They're looking for some strong leadership. I said, yeah, everyone says they want a strong leader.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? So they want a strong leader, they want someone who can drive innovation, and they want someone who can, I think it was people and something like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
culture.
okay.
Yeah.
Succession planning, that's what it was.
Right.
Develop
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. And he said, so, it was probably like a Friday. And he was like, take the weekend and, send me a one-pager that outlines how you kind of, meet those 3 qualities. And I went, okay, that sounds pretty easy. So I did my one-pager and sent it in. Lo and behold, I got the job. But the point of that is my first instinct wasn't about the CEO role. It was about the organization, right? And then I back, well, I'm not that person.
Right.
And so how do I fit for that? And so when the board hired me, they wanted transformation.
Right.
And that's not unusual. Like, sometimes you see organizations where they pivot to an outside candidate because they want something different. So I felt a strong amount of support and indeed probably a license to transform and change the organization.
To be different, to bring something different. Because you came from a very different industry.
I did. I came from the utility world
Right.
where, I used to joke, like, who doesn't love a transformer and a power line? And I could talk about power all day long. I think, probably thankfully, I can't much anymore because I've lost kind of sight of it.
Right.
You want to talk about cars now, I'm your gal. Or at least tow trucks.
Yeah.
We can talk a lot about that. But you shift and transform as leaders. I think we all do, right? I'm a very different leader today than I was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was different than I was the 5 years before that, and 5 years before that. And I know that it's the continued evolution. As you grow and learn, you become something different, and part of that is the environment around you. So when I stepped into this role, it was about driving transformation.
Yeah.
And there's a great quote out there. I can't attribute it to anyone because I can't remember, but it's, everyone loves transformation, no one likes change. I am a transforming leader. I know I am. I love change. I am infinitely creative. I'm an idea generator.
Yeah.
I love inspiring people. I love thinking about the art of the kind of impossible. Like, what can I do? When people say no to me, I go, well, that's interesting. how do we get to yes? How do I make it happen? You can always find a way to not make it happen. How do we make it happen? And I think when I leave this organization, I hope it's been transformed. Like, I hope it's something different. And honestly, I think it already is. Like, but it needs to stick, hey?
Yep.
And that's that vacuum noise that I mentioned.
Yeah.
That cannot happen.
Right.
So I think today we have many internal candidates that will be strong successors for my role, right? The board will have a plethora of
so
choice.
it can move forward, like it continue.
So that the journey can continue. We are growing, we are transforming, we are changing. And one of the things I'm most proud of, I don't think there's anyone will not know this, is what we've done for our people and our culture.
That was going to be my next question, actually. As an employee of CAA Atlantic, obviously I feel it. And like I said, we had a good culture before, but it's even better now, I think. And, some of that speaks to our EDIA journey. Some of that speaks to the women representation in senior management roles, flexible work, all these sorts of things. But I want to ask, when we're talking about gender equality, how do we uplift and support women in the workplace so that they can take roles in senior management?
So I really believe strongly that when you create a good place to work for everyone, you create a good workplace for women. And when you create a great workplace for women, you create a great workplace for everyone, right? So, as companies were dialing back on their remote work and their hybrid work policies and all that, we stood strong. And we're like, that's not going to happen here. So, and I can't foresee a situation that would make it happen. We have strong performance. People are achieving. We're achieving all our goals, objectives, targets. Our engagement scores are amazing and high. Our employee experience score is 3 times the average from the McLean & Company where we measure it, which is a very reputable.
3.7.
Sorry, 3.7 times higher. Thank you. I'd love correction on data. So we are creating something unique and special. And let me say that you can't take your eye off the ball.
Right.
Like that is an accelerator. I don't use gas pedal anymore, by the way. You'll appreciate that because you're a huge EV advocate.
Yep.
I don't say you got to keep your foot on the gas. No, you got
Accelerator.
to keep your foot on the accelerator. And you need to be steady at it. So I think the things that we've done, having, fair compensation, trying to get our workers to a living wage, making sure that there's equity across the organization, making sure that there are opportunities. We've got career paths mapped out for people so they can see, okay, I just entered this company. How do I get to her job? And I'm on that. You want to get to the CEO? Here's the job. And here's what you need to have in order to get there. Flexible work policies, our paid time off and vacation leave. Like everything we've done is phenomenal for... It doesn't matter, honestly, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, your race, your gender. We are working so hard to create that environment that when you come to work, you love what you do, you are valued and respected. And I think that's it's part of what's created the change, okay? Because it's people that are driving. I said very early on, people would say we are a member company. No, we're not, we're a people company serving members. Right? If you treat your people well, they will do well by members. Yeah. Right? And we hear that all the time. We have, and you know this, we've got federation leading SAT scores. Oh, yeah. Our net promoter scores, people would...
Continent leading.
Yeah, continent leading. Good point. Yeah. Very good point.
That's
right.
That's AAA too.
NPS scores. Our NPS scores are, like mid to high 80s. People love doing business with us. Doesn't mean we can't be better, by the way. Love telling people that. When I speak about the success we've had, I'm kind of like my mother. I don't know if everyone's mother was like this, but, my mother was a bit like 2 lessons I learned from my mother. One was, if you got kind of 90, it was where'd the 10% go? And, I remember my first university paper, by the way, it's a bit embarrassing. I got 65. It was a sociology paper. I think I dropped the course. I got 65, and I was on the payphone at the end of res, talking to mom. Mom's like, how much, what was the level of effort you put into it? Was it like a C effort? I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. She's like, well, there you go. So, you need to press forward and stay focused on achieving.
Yeah. Right. We didn't even touch on the fact that our board is
chaired by a woman.
Yeah.
Vice chair is a woman.
Yeah, exactly. And the representation like on the board members is also I think part of the reason why you would earn an award like Most Powerful Women in Atlantic Canada is because it's not just you, right? It's the executive leadership team, it's the board, and that kind of trickle down that I was talking about, where there's a lot of management that are female as well. So let's talk a little bit about, what this means to you, to wrap up. What does it signify?
It's a bit weird to talk about. It's the only way I can put it. And I spent a long time in my career. I did a lot of media, had a lot of microphones in my face. Mm-hmm. I've been in tough situations. I've done a lot of media interviews during tough situations, crises, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So when I took this role, I really didn't feel the need to be in the limelight at all, actually. I have a concept I use quite often, which I learned from a mentor of mine. There's this up and out role you have as a CEO, right? You're expected to do it. I go to the Federation, I go to meetings with our counterparts in the U.S. You represent, and that's what you do. Yeah. You go to community events, all that stuff, which is super, super important. Yeah. But my focus has been so down and in. Mm-hmm. It's been really on creating this great company that people work for. Like, that's what floats my boat. It's what gets me enthused in the morning, because I know that I can have a direct impact at this point on over 200 people. Mm-hmm. And how they experience their days, how they live their lives. Work is such a core and critical part of what we do. So when I think about this award, that's what I think about. It's, what impact are we having on our members' lives? Mm-hmm. What are we doing for members? And we do tremendous work for our members.
And happy employees, engaged, happy employees translates directly to members being served better.
Yeah, listen, if you go somewhere and you have a poor service experience, yes, okay, that person may have had a tough morning. Right. Things may have happened that you know nothing about. Yeah. And I really believe that powerfully. Like, you don't know what someone else has experienced, and so cool your jets. Yeah. But when you go somewhere and you have an awesome experience, yes, it's the individual, but I can promise you it is the structure and supports around them in that company. Mm-hmm. It is the culture that has been created that values them, and then they value their work. Our own dignity most of the time, and our self-worth is so wrapped up in work, right? One of my first jobs, by the way, was as an employment counselor with the federal government. It was almost right out of school, and it never leaves you. Mm-hmm. Like, once you do that and you help people find work, it never leaves you, and you understand the importance and value that we as a society attribute to work. That doesn't mean I don't attribute value to people that don't choose that, but I understand that intimately. Yeah. So that's my job. So when I look at this award and I think about being recognized, it really is about the couple of hundred people that work with us and what I have the privilege of doing with them and creating every single day. It is astounding.
I think that's a really great place to wrap up. So I want to thank you for everybody for tuning in today for this little chat with Dawn about women in leadership, and congratulations again on your award.
Thank you very much.
We're in for a fun time this evening, hopefully.
We are.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Julia.